Do you guys know Elliot Page? Formerly known as Ellen Page. Because, we can't dead name people. You'll end up getting demonetized. So Elliot Page is this 38-year-old Canadian trans man, former child star. Broke out back in 2007 with Elliot's role in Juno. And before y'all argue with me, I feel like I always have to put this disclaimer out there because y'all drag me if I play by the rules and I use the proper pronouns. I do not want to be banned on YouTube. If I am banned from YouTube, then I cannot talk about anything else. Just know, y'all know how I feel. Y'all know how I feel about Elliot Page. So, no shade. So, Elliot Page, the actor, had a breakout role back in 2007 in Juno. Again, a former child star. Was also in X-Men, The Last Stand, was in Inception, and The Umbrella Academy from 2019 to 2024. So a very long resume. Back when Elliot was Ellen, had a very lucrative career, but then came out, I should say, because I'm pretty sure Elliot's career is still doing decent. But Elliot came out as transgender back in December of 2020, and now is using he, they pronouns because Elliot feels like Elliot is multiple people at once and decides to make us all be grammatically incorrect whenever Elliot pleases. So that being said, pre and post transition, Elliot has still managed to maintain a career. Now, the reason we are talking about Elliot is because, we just got done suffering through Trans Day of Visibility. And again, it's not even that I have a problem seeing trans people. I'm not saying that I need every trans person to disappear from the face of the earth. It's just draining to me. It's like, what do you mean Day of Visibility? We see you every day. We see you every single day of this decade. Okay, I feel like every single day is Trans Day of Visibility. But the reason that we're talking about Elliot is because I was scrolling through Twitter, minding my business, and this insufferable video ended up popping up on my feed. And honestly, more than anything, it made me genuinely sad. So unfortunately, y'all gotta see it too.
Goodness, what has brought me the most joy? The most joy. It's getting out of the shower and the towels around your waist and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're just like, there I am. I'm not having all these little moments that used to be just being in a t-shirt. It's being able to
I'm uncomfortable watching this.
Touch my chest and
You're gonna do that before.
Feel comfortable in my body for probably the first time. Tears of joy.
Tears of joy. That is Trans Joy, everyone. Give it up for Trans Joy. That was Trans Joy right now. Y'all know me. Respectfully, I have to read this video for filth, first of all, because that is not male behavior. Okay, that is not male mentality, and that for sure is not male anatomy. And that haircut, that is just your typical lesbian haircut. Okay, and when I look at that clip and I look at what Elliot Page, or how Elliot Page is, carrying themselves, that is simply another traumatized lesbian who has chopped off their breasts in an act of defiance against the male gaze and succumbing to their self-disdain. And it's very sad to me. It's very sad because this is someone who just hates themselves. And it's so funny, as a Black conservative, I'm constantly getting told like, oh, you hate yourself. Baby, I love myself. I love this chair. I love my cousins. I love my audience. I love what it is I get to do. And I'm not one of those people who likes to sit there and tell people how they feel about themselves, because I know how often people try to do that to me. But me trying to have empathy and, genuinely having empathy for Elliot, it's screaming self-disdain. It is screaming trauma. And, I looked more into Elliot's background, and turns out Elliot is very vocal about the sexual abuse that he endured as a teen star. Even in his 2013 memoir, Page Boy, Elliot talks about the multiple incidents in his teenage years in Hollywood where he was, being violated and being groomed by directors and by different people in the crew, and even specified some of the films that this happened and some of the productions that this happened during. And it's very sad. He describes these details or these incidences with a lot of details and how they are traumatic, and how noting that they involved both men and women and occurred when he was vulnerable and isolated as a young actor. So like I said, this is not someone with gender dysphoria. This is someone who is desperately crying for help and whose entire identity is desperately crying for help. And this is sad. We should all be able to come together and agree that what we just saw in that clip is sad. Okay, because because gender dysphoria is a very real mental illness. And this is like another example of why it's so sad when these movements get hijacked by woke culture, because something that should be a serious conversation about mental illness and mental health ends up turning into just woke gay propaganda at this point. And it's actually very disheartening, because people with real gender dysphoria, they don't go on a press tour talking about their gender dysphoria. Okay. If you meet someone that genuinely deals with the psychological condition of gender dysphoria, they would rather, like a trans woman, for example, would literally, a lot of them would die before they ever talked about their bulge or their 5 o'clock shadow. If we're just being blunt about it, okay? If we're just being very direct in this conversation, this is a safe space for conversation, isn't it? Is it not? Because that's just not how this works. Okay. Anyone that is a real trans man, they're not wanting to constantly talk about their experience of chopping off their breasts. They want to blend into society. Okay. So that's why this whole thing of Trans Day of Visibility doesn't even make sense to me, because I feel like the LGBT community as well as the T community was getting along just fine when it was just something they did in the privacy. I mean, I don't even want to say it like that. When it was just something that they did living their lives, when they were out living their lives and not making it a personality trait and not making it something that is shoved into the media and shoved into our faces all the time. Because even the amount of times that this is a conversation is insane when you think of how minute of a percentage this community is. Okay. Why is there so much hyperfixation on their visibility if it's such a small percentage of the country? And I feel like people would not care as much if this wasn't something shoved down our throats. I remember the first two people that I learned about were transgender were Chaz Bono, which is Cher and Sonny's son, and Laverne Cox, which is this black trans woman. And those two, from what I remember, they were just living their lives. They were really just trying to get their bag, live their careers, and do their thing. And nobody really was transphobic. Like, I don't really remember anybody taking great issue with those two living their lives, because it wasn't like a Dylan Mulvaney situation where we were forced to accept it, where we were forced to sit there and be like, okay, this is normal and this is reality. It's like, we just want to be able to move on. All right. Is that too much to ask? As someone who I have some classically liberal and libertarian ideas, and when it comes to that, I want you to go live your life as a consenting adult. I think spiritually, I think there's a whole nother battle there, but when it comes to legality, you're going to do what you want to do. But can you please be so for real in this conversation and just admit that you are not a man on the inside? You are a traumatized lesbian that is overcompensating so much so that you went and chopped off your breasts, and now you're sitting here crying in an interview as a grown man about how happy it makes you to be able to stand in the mirror with a towel and touch your chest. Could you not do that before? You're telling me you couldn't touch your chest before? Okay. Just say that you were tired of being violated, so you chopped off your breast so men wouldn't look at you as much. Just say that. If that's the case, then just say that. Have a real open conversation about mental health and abuse. Okay, there's a real healthy, productive conversation that can be had there, but it's not happening because we're instead focusing on Trans Day of Visibility. Okay, I wish that we could get more serious about, psychiatric exams and psychiatric care for people who are really dealing with gender dysphoria, or in Elliot's page, PTSD. This to me looks like PTSD more than anything. As someone diagnosed with PTSD twice, oh yes, but I've dealt with my trauma. You need to deal with yours. Okay? No shade. Because otherwise we just keep ending up with more and more of these over emotional people who are wildly self-unaware. And it's sad to me. It reminds me of this other trans man. If you guys remember this viral clip that was from Jubilee, where this trans man sat down with Ben Shapiro. Shout out to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has dealt with a lot of insufferable people. He has so much more patience than me because I am such a crash out. I could never do the Jubilee Surrounded episodes, and they asked me to do it before. And I was just like, trust me, if I was in the middle, I would be throwing hands within like 2 minutes. Because if y'all are surrounding me, I'm putting my back against that wall and I'm windmilling you wenches all day. But let's play this clip.
Wow, okay, we're gonna take this chair. Look at that.
Hey, man.
Like a bro, my friend. All right.
Like a bro.
How's it going?
Let's break open
first
a beer or
question,
something.
can men get pregnant?
Men cannot get pregnant,
Okay, awesome.
It's always weird.
So,
definitionally.
definitionally, okay. Do men experience SA? Sexual assault?
Sure.
Got it. What about the existence of trans men?
What about the existence? Do you mean women who believe that they are men? What are we talking about
She's
here?
sweet.
Women experiencing gender dysphoria?
So my other question
She's,
is,
of
do you
course, studying
benefit
gender
from white
studies,
supremacy in any way, shape, or form?
And of course, the
I'm gonna need more
intersectionality, white
specifics on what you
supremacy,
mean by
and
white
Well, here, let me give it to you
pregnant
then.
men.
Sure,
like,
please.
So I'm a transgender man.
Okay.
I've experienced SA.
Okay.
And abortion rights affect me directly. So if we're talking about the American dream that you live,
So-
why don't I have access to that? Because there's no legislation, in the history of America, that legislates a man's body. So why does mine have to be legislated? I've got a vagina.
I'm not interested
projectile
in
vomited
what
all over
your
that
genitalia are.
Clearly you are. I mean, it's all over everything you make,
no,
buddy. I'm sorry. I hate to say it to you, but
I think you can read on my face that I radically am not.
Have.
I think you can read on my face that I radically am not. When we're talking about
No,
abortion,
I don't. I mean, you can present it here, but in most of the content that you have, you attack my community constantly. And you don't even realize guys like me exist who actually share a lot of similarities to you and everything, because I'm a married man of 20 years.
I
got a wife.
recognize that you exist. I disagree with
Right,
your claim
so
that you
if
are
I
a
was-
male.
Okay, I'll say that's enough for me. I can't. I literally can't. This is an example of cosplaying what you think a male acts like. And it's so funny because when it comes to this whole transgenderism conversation, you see them go from one side to the other and they literally cosplay the stereotypes of male or female. But then they'll also tell you in the next breath that those two binaries don't exist. Pick a struggle. Like, I really cannot. I can't. I will take April Fool's Day every single day than Trans Visibility Day. I just can't do it. I can't. Y'all make me want to projectile vomit.